Hi folks, in this video I'm going to be looking at painting the true metallic metal gold casing on this Orc pistol, and you can use any model that you want to apply some gold metallic effects to. So without any further ado, let's cue the music. To start out with, I'll be applying a base coat of Necro gold from scale 75 all over the areas that I want to be gold. And I'm doing this over a black base coat because I always find that metallic paints always perform their best over a black base coat. I've thinned this paint down with a little bit of water, not too much, just to ensure that the paint flows smoothly off my brush, as metallic paints can be quite thick pigmented. And at this stage I'm not worried about being overly neat, just making sure that I've got a nice smooth base coat over the desired areas. If you've painted other bits of the model, then don't worry if you make any mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, so just manage to go back in with your original base coat, or if you do make any mistakes, overflowing onto any other areas. For the next highlight, I'll be using Viking Gold, once again from scale 75. And for this first highlight, I'll be painting the lower 2/3 of the side of the casing of this pistol, and the very top of the bit that sticks out onto the side. And what I'm doing here is I'm thinking about where the light's going to hit the model. If the light from the sun is going to be hitting this, it's going to be mostly from the top, but as you look further away from it, the light is going to get more and more hitting the sides. So the very top of the panel is going to be the most in shadow. We still want it to read as gold, which is why we're still only putting a very little bit up at the top that is still in our original base colour. And once again, I've thinned this with just a little bit of water to ensure that it flows off the brush. If the item, area or armor piece that you are painting is more complex than this square piece of gun casing, then you might want to paint this over most of the raised areas, leaving your original base coat into the shadows. The trick is here as we're starting to build up some contrast, but we don't want to lose the really dark Necro gold that we have in our shadow tone. We can come in and embellish this later, but it is a nice thing to be able to keep this as a nice bright highlight without losing any of our shadow tones. The next highlight is going to be quite a jump up in brightness, and for this I'm using Elven gold from scale 75, and with this I'm painting the lower third of the panel of the side of this gun. As well as painting the lower third of this panel, I'm also going to go around and do a zenithal edge highlight, and for this it is a different style of edge highlighting to Games Workshop. Games Workshop tend to highlight everything, including the bottom edges of the panels, which doesn't make sense because the light isn't very strong there and it's not going to hit. So here I've highlighted across the top edge and down the sides and in the very base of the vents. And there's no exact science and there's no real rules as to exactly how much of the bottom third that you paint. You might just want to do a little bit. It depends if you want to go for a much more brighter gold or for a warmer tone. The Viking gold is quite warm in tone, and this Elven gold is quite bright, so the more of the panel you cover with this Elven gold, the brighter and shiny the finish is going to be. The less of it you paint, the more warmer this gold is going to be. And with just these three colours, you're going to be able to give yourself some nice transitions and variations in tones depending exactly how much you leave in shadow in your 3-colour blend. As an optional step, I am now coming in with some Decayed metal from scale 75, and this is a really dark metallic colour, almost a dark brassy bronze colour, and to do this I'm redefining any shadows that might have got lost in other stages. And to do this I'm going into the cracks and crevices for any shadows, and I'm also defining any rivets that might need some shadow and contrast around them. You can also use a wash for this, but I quite like using a darker paint for this, as it gives me a lot more control than trying to do a thin, very delicate area of shadow without having to worry about the wash going over everywhere and losing out what I've already painted and having to go back in. For the final highlight, I'm using Citrine Alchemy from Scale 75, and I really like Scale Color's Alchemy paints. They are a metallic, but they are very much a tinting or a desaturated tone, and this Citrine Alchemy is a very desaturated gold, and it's almost to the point of being silver, but still reads as gold, and it's very light. And with this, I'm picking out all of the rivets, and I'm doing an edge highlight for where the light would be the strongest. So this is along the top edges, the sides, and the underneath of any scratches and chip markings that are in the item of the gold panel. It's very easy to go overboard with this, so I try and keep your lines as neat and as thin as possible. And don't worry, you can always go back in with a base colour to neaten this up if you believe that your line is too thick or too chunky. And I'd recommend doing a little bit and then going back and seeing what you think of it, as it's much easier to apply more of this paint than it is to take it away again. It's not impossible to take away, but it does leave a very stylized finish once it's been applied. And with that, this True Metallic Metal Gold is now complete. If you enjoyed this tutorial, why not consider subscribing? It's free of charge, it helps me out, and you get further tutorials just like this one in your YouTube feed. But congratulations if you made it all the way to the end, and I hope it's given you some ideas on how to paint golds differently and how to do that whole non-metallic metal style, but using actual metallic paints on your miniatures. So, till next time folks.